Next is number 15, the final reading of the proposed capital budget for 2014-2015. May I have a motion? Mr. White.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a final reading of the proposed capital budget for 2014-2015 included as Exhibit F.
All right, may I have a second? Ms. Baumgartner seconds. Discussion. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to, Mr. Richardson, take us back to our board meeting on January the 13th. I think that happened to be your first meeting with us. And at that meeting, we adopted a resolution then that took care of the mold abatement. And we had talked about that as when Mrs. Heiser presented that. She told us that we were doing that in anticipation of the issuance of our general obligation bonds, that we had flexibility. It didn't mean that we would have to pay ourselves back, but to me, this sort of relates to the capital budget because it would be an opportunity for us to have put in this capital budget that we were paying ourselves back from an expense that we already knew about. But in December, when we first talked about the mold abatement, we had heard a figure, and then you updated that figure in January. Has that been settled? Have those obligations been paid?
Yes, sir. Actually, my first board meeting was my first day on the job, just for your information. I don't recall the exact amount, but at that time I told you that the mold abatement was going to run somewhere in the neighborhood of about $500,000, which it has turned out to be, a little bit shy of that. We did not have to use any general fund dollars to make that payment so that upcoming capital budget could reimburse the general fund. We actually used the current capital budget. We had enough room there, enough contingency there to be able to take care of that. So there will not be any reimbursement based on that resolution.
That's wonderful. So from capital projects previously, either 12, 13, 13, 14, we had some unused monies that we had intended to spend on some project that we had approved that we'd either saved money somewhere along the line or a project was decided it wasn't something we were going to do. So we had those funds left over.
Well, it was actually from the 14, pardon me, it was from the 14 capital budget, the current year capital budget, that there was enough in contingency set aside for unforeseen items and just happened to take care of that.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Chair, I just want to go through this budget, and I do apologize, but the first reading we had a few questions, and in the last meeting we were 2 members short, and we didn't have a lot of capital. And I know this is the final reading, but I just wanted to ask a few things just so that I understood what the expenditures were for. And I had the pleasure today, Dr. Couch gave me a walking tour of the building, and one of the early things in here is a balance needed for vet sciences barn construction. And in last year's budget, I think we had $126,000 or something like that for the construction of the greenhouse and others. And understand that we've added the barn as an additional structure for that program, which I think is wonderful. But the greenhouse has not been started, I don't think, and they're hoping to have all that finished. So we still have the monies from last year's budget available in addition to this. Okay. In last year's budget, we purchased a courier vehicle, or at least it was in the budget too. It was one courier vehicle for $15,000. In this budget, we are replacing a courier vehicle. The estimated cost is $18,000. How many courier vehicles do we have?
2, I believe.
So we have the brand new one from last year, and then we'll have another brand new one. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Replace the walk-in cooler freezer at Dutch Fork Elementary School. I assume that with that type of improvement there, should there be any renovations to Dutch Fork Elementary School, there's no indication that we would run into any problems having to move that around or duplicate that expense down the road, that would be adequate for their school.
That is my assumption, and that cooler, I think, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 years old, so it's on its last leg.
Okay.
That's why the replacement is in here.
Okay. Also, last year in the budget, we had planned to purchase, I'm not sure the exact number, I think we had, there were 166 handheld radios that were budgeted to be purchased at $50 each. And this year, in this budget, there are 76 handheld radios to be purchased at a different price point. It's going from 50 to 250. Do you know if we purchased those 166 last year, or did we delay that because this is a better radio?
I don't know if we purchased all of the ones in the current year or not, but what I do know is that there was a big request for those type radios, and there was enough money in the capital to, I guess, adequately purchase these type of radios that are supposedly much higher grade. And I can't answer the question on what we purchased last year. Do you know?
We did purchase several of those radios, Mr. Turner, and you're absolutely right in your assessment. This higher dollar amount is exactly a higher grade radio it's a lot more durable than what we did on last year, and that was the request for this year by many of our schools.
Okay. Just three more. Ms. McAllister talked about Chapin Elementary School and the fact that we had done such a great job of almost rebuilding that school, but in this budget, we have $35,000 to renovate restrooms at Chapin Elementary School. Was that something that just wasn't done in the bond referendum funds, or is there some reason that we're having to renovate however many restrooms that is at Chapin Elementary?
These restrooms were not renovated. These are the ones that are outside of the cafeteria.
Okay. Two more, but district-wide landscaping, and all these things, of course, it's nice to have nice bathrooms, and I realize that these are not things that are necessarily in the classroom, but there are things that do enhance our schools. Referring to last year's budget, we budgeted $62,500 for erosion control and landscape in the front of Chapin Middle School by itself. As much as $75,000 doesn't seem like it would really do particularly much compared to what we spend at one school for erosion control and landscape out in front. So is there a particular use there? Those of us that are familiar with some of the landscaping that's been done at two of our elementary schools, Dutch Fork Elementary and also H.E. Corley Elementary and also Irmo Elementary, through the use of some Arbor Day funds. Is there a particular project that we have in mind, or is that just some general landscaping?
I'm not aware of any particular project. This is just for district-wide landscaping as needed.
Okay, just as it's an as needed. There's no particular use designated. It can be used wherever, as far as you're concerned. It's just some money put in the budget to take care of any landscaping needs.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
Very good. Madam Chair, thank you. That's it.
Are there more questions? Mr. Turner, we do appreciate your very thorough analysis of these budgets, and we know that you go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Well, thank you, but I really appreciate Mr. Richardson's, I would use the word willingness. I would expect nothing else, but working with Mr. Richardson on a lot of these financial things has really been a pleasure. He's honest. He does admit this is a huge job that he has, and he's had to take on quite a bit in the length of time he's been here. So it's been a pleasure working with him.
Thank you. Ms. Lovelace?
I know one question. On Oak Point last meeting, we talked about the lobby guard machine, that we possibly were going to be taking this out, but it's still here, so have we decided to keep it?
Apparently so. I didn't mean to be flippant. I don't recall the need for it now, honestly.
Am I correct on that? I'm not, okay. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I think maybe Mr. Turner brought it up, and that the lobby guard, was this going to be a replacement of a lobby guard, or was this going to be an extra lobby guard?
Well, it is my understanding this was going to be an additional lobby guard for those days when there were extra visitors in the school. We did talk about perhaps having an alternative means of letting people in the school without going through lobby guard. And it's probably something we probably could look at as we get into this to see if it really needs to be an additional one.
You probably know all these answers. On the Dutch Fork Elementary, for the smart boards and projectors, for 30, are we replacing all the smart boards, or are we adding?
These are replacements.
Okay.
I don't know if it replaces every one of them, but they are replacements. This was
We're replacing a lot,
specific
okay.
request from the school.
All right. I'm doing like you. I got one more question. On the solar shades for all windows for the Academy for Success, how many windows are we talking?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. I'll ask you later. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Richardson, I do have one more question, not about this budget in particular, but is it your plan to provide a quarterly update? And you've changed the format of this capital budget, and to me, I think it's much easier to read. It's certainly much smaller, and it's easier to go through, but do you plan to provide the board with a quarterly update that will also include anything from prior capital budgets whose expenditures or whose projects have not been done? Is that your intention?
Yes, sir, it is my intention. I can provide whatever the board likes, actually, but it is my intention to continue the quarterly reports as we've been doing and hopefully show you where we've closed out prior projects as we go along as well.
Okay. Mr. White?
Just out of curiosity, these smart boards, how long do those typically last?
I do not know. Anybody from technology?
I'm just curious when we purchased these. Anybody know? They're not that, I mean, it wasn't that long ago we started adding smart boards, was it? Robert, do you remember?
It's been a while.
So what do you think? How many years used to you
So
get?
I don't know. I'll get with Mr. Black and send something to the board with a little wrap-up of where we are with smart boards. And my knowledge, only through Mr. Black, is that there is a standard replacement cycle, and if we wait till all of them are bad, the expenditure would be pretty significant. So we try to replace them as the bulbs go out and as they need to be replaced. And of course, the technology does improve as well. So, we want the better technology in the classroom, but that's an unanswered question. We can either bring it back next month, or I can send something to the board with that answer.
Mr. Gann?
I just had a comment. Ms. Lovelace mentioned the shades at the Academy for Success, which I think it's a great thought. And I noticed that Spring Hill High School, so virtually the entire school is going to get those shades. But I think that points out to me one of the things we've been working with the new middle school and architect. So taking advantage of some of the overhang and the placement and so forth, it may avoid that. And I don't know exactly what kind of shade. The total is not like these shades in this room, but it's hopefully something we will avoid on the placement on this next school. But was a good observation you made. So,
I had a question. Harbison West Elementary, we have a purchase for a wet, dry squeegee and also drying fans for carpet. Does that indicate that there's a bigger problem that we need to address?
No, it does not. That is, I did find that out. That is, those carpet fans are used to dry the carpets after they've been cleaned, and there were not enough, the school did not have enough fans for every classroom to sufficiently dry them. There are no leaks or anything
Okay,
of that nature, as far as I know.
okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other questions, so the motion was to give final reading of the proposed capital budget for 2014 and 2015. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed? That passes 6-0. That concludes our action agenda. Next is the proposed textbook adoption, shown in Exhibit G.